Good morning, Year 10. Welcome to our second remote lesson on video. Today we're going to be doing expansion in Africa 1850 to 1900. We're going to finish what we were doing last lesson, and then we're going to look at imperial propaganda. We're very close to the end of expansion into Africa. This is our last lesson on it, and next lesson we'll obviously be moving on to something new. It's important that if you haven't already done so, that you go back and complete the lesson from last week, because without that you won't understand how to do this week, and there is time for you to do that. This lesson is slightly shorter to allow you to go back and complete it a bit more if you haven't already done so. A reminder that you should have also handed in your essay question at the end. Okay, it was a very short one. It was a 10-minute, 10 marker, and I'm going to be marking those and giving you some feedback to look out for a bit later on as well. So remember that with these lessons, because they're on YouTube, you don't need to have access to a computer. You can do this on your phone if you'd like to. All you need is a pen and paper. Pen and paper is what you need. For the last question, the one that you're going to be submitting to me, or the question you do submit to me, that one you'll need to get on a computer and message to me, but you'll have time to do that later. Or you can take a picture and submit it on Show My Homework. So, pen and paper. If you haven't got one, please pause the video now and go off and get one. Okay then, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to be looking at a 16-mark question. Okay, so we're going to be kind of delving into what we did last lesson and the lessons previous. We're going to look at the causes of the scramble for Africa, and we are going to be writing an extended piece of writing on it. So, expansion to Africa, we're doing a quick recap. So there are four main reasons why Britain wanted or felt it could go into Africa. The first one is money and raw materials, things like groundnut oil. It was an alternate source of income to slavery. Remember that Britain was in the middle of the Industrial Revolution, and it needed things like groundnut oil to lubricate the machines, okay, to keep them at their maximum efficiency. And Africa was this untapped land with large amounts of raw materials, not just precious materials, but raw materials as well, like wood, like oil. It was also seen as an alternative source of income to slavery, because obviously slavery had been gotten rid of, so Britain needed a way to make more money. Ideology and social Darwinism are another one. So ideology in the form of social Darwinism and imperialism. Social Darwinism is the idea of the survival of the fittest. Imperialism is this belief that you are better than you are the best race, the best civilization in the world. So ideology was the belief that as a superior race or superior civilization, they have the right to go in and take over. So Britain, using the teachings of social Darwinism, who believed in survival of the fittest, said that, well, if Britain is powerful enough to do so, then it should take over. Religion and missionaries. Many missionaries wanted to improve the lives of Africans as well as changing their religion. So a lot of people went into Africa to actually convert the natives to Christianity, to spread Christianity, as they believed it was the best religion. And the last one is international competition. So obviously the scramble for Africa starts. Britain isn't that interested, but if Belgium starting to take parts of Africa, France and Italy and Germany are starting to get involved, then Britain, to maintain itself as one of the best and most powerful nations, needs to join the scramble. So Britain not only wants to join the scramble, but it wants to be the most powerful nation during the scramble. It wants to take the most amount of land during the scramble. And that's shown by the actual, the Berlin Conference to settle that. We talked about how it could have been an international nightmare. There could have been a war fought. The actual World War wasn't fought until 1914, but there could have been a war in the late 1800s if the Berlin Conference didn't happen. So those are your facts. That's your knowledge. Those are the four factors which answer the question, why was there expansion in Africa? Now, we're going to have a look at a quick 16-mark question. All right. Now, this is not like a normal 16-mark question in your exam. The main reason being is it's not testing the factors that the exam would be on, and it's also only focused on Africa, British involvement in Africa in the 19th century. Now, your specific question will be a lot more open, it will look at the entire course. This is a practice in how we write, not necessarily what we're writing. It's not about the using an expansive part of the syllabus. We're looking at the paragraph structures. We're looking at how we are writing, how we're supporting what we're writing with evidence, and then we're linking it back to the question. So were ideas such as imperialism, social Darwinism the main factor driving British involvement in Africa in the 19th century? Again, the factor it wants you to talk about is imperialism and social Darwinism. It then wants you to talk about two other factors and then come to a conclusion. Now, if we go back a page, we've got social Darwinism and imperialism right here. So that's our first paragraph, and then our second paragraph could be on either of the three, and then our third paragraph could be on another one as well. So right there, I've given you four factors. You only need to talk about three. So the first paragraph, I agree. Ideas such as imperialism and social Darwinism was the main factor. So I agree. The main factor driving British involvement in Africa was the ideas such as imperialism and social Darwinism, because by factors support that's your evidence. This shows that ideas such as imperialism and social Darwinism did drive British involvement because. So in the first point, you're making your argument clear. You're saying to the marker exactly what you think. You're then finding a specific fact and supporting it with this sentence here. And then the last sentence is designed to link back to the question. And that last sentence should mirror your first point that you've made, and it should link it to your fact. So this is not for new information. This is for almost repeating yourself and showing the examiner that you know exactly what you're talking about. Your paragraph 2 is a disagree. So your point will be, I disagree that the main factor during driving British involvement in Africa was ideas such as imperialism and Darwinism. I think another reason was important, like I'd say trade, for example. My fact to support this is you could talk about granite oil. This shows that it was not ideas such as imperialism and Darwinism that drove British involvement. It was, and then because, and that links it back to the question. You do exactly the same thing again. You use the same sentences to come up with a different argument, and this is another counter argument. So you're supporting it with another fact. So you should choose the factor from the first slide again. And to decide which one you're going to put in there. Maybe you talk about religion and missionaries. And then the final thing you need to do is you need to write a conclusion. And it doesn't matter whether you support or, if you rubbish the factor in the question, you must address directly the factor in the question. So overall, I believe ideas such as imperialism and socialism or a different factor was the main factor because I believe, and then you talk about why one wasn't the main factor because. So again, in that conclusion, you're not offering anything new, you're not addressing anything new in your argument, you're quite literally just going back over and you're repeating what you've already said, okay, and you're concluding, and that's your judgment. Now, to get into that top 4 marks of the 16 marks, you've got to have your own judgment. You've got to show the examiner that you can come to a decision yourself using facts. That's the 16 mark question. You've got sentence starters on this slide, you've got your ideas and some facts on the previous slide. What I'm going to ask you to do now is I want you to pause the video for 25 minutes. I want you to set a timer. I want you to give this a go. So you're writing 3 paragraphs and a conclusion. So I'm going to set you off now, 25 minutes. Give it your best go. See you in a minute. Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that it's it's quite a lot to start off with, but it is important. You are going to be answering 16 mark questions. It's important that you get used to them. So now we've done that 16 mark question, what I'm going to ask is that you get that information to me, get what you've written to me in some way, whether it's emailing me, whether it's putting it on Show My Homework, and if I get enough of these, I'll be giving you some feedback as well. It's important to note that there is already a 16 mark feedback video. I think it was feedback video 1, and that's available on YouTube. If you follow the links below, you'll find those feedback videos, and it goes through exactly how you should be writing a 16 mark question. So that's just for a bit more support. The question I'm going to get you, the compulsory question, is going to be at the end of this video. But please get this one to me as well, and it's something that I can mark and get back to you, which is important. So this is what we're going to be looking at today. How was the British Empire celebrated? And celebrating the British Empire back then is incredibly important. Why? Because if you can win the support of the British public, the government can do what it wants. If no one's complaining, if people in the country are happy, then the British government almost have a mandate to do what they'd like to do because they've got that public support. So look at these images. Just spend 1 minute taking a look at these images. Pause the video now and see if you can tell me what they are celebrating. Okay, so hopefully you've got it. It does say it on this tin here. This is Queen Elizabeth II's Golden Jubilee. This is 50 years on the throne. We've got a little maybe sugar bowl. We've got a spoon. People in Britain really like spoon collections. We've got a tea tin here, which is the Golden Jubilee. We've got a teacup or a coffee mug or just a mug. And here we've got a newspaper with the Queen all over it. It says a 64-page colour picture souvenir magazine. So it's something you might put away in a drawer and keep and try and sell for maybe a bit more money in the future. This is all about celebrating the Queen. This is all about, it's about lifting her and saying, this is how special our Queen is. And the Queen is really synonymous with Britishness. So when people think about Britain, people from other countries think about Britain, one of the first things that will come into their heads is the Queen. The Queen, although she doesn't have the same role she used to do, still plays a really important role in our in Britain's status as a world power, and in terms of bringing in huge amounts of tourists every year who go and visit places like Buckingham Palace. So in 1887, Queen Victoria celebrated 50 years as Queen, and the British government used this as a way to celebrate empire. Now, Victoria was seen as the Empress of India. She was seen as the ruler of the largest empire the world's ever seen, the empire that the sun never sets on because it's so large and so expansive. We've got a plate here. This is called an empire plate, and on the left-hand side, we've actually got the packaging for an item. So that the Victoria's Jubilee has nothing to do with the item that's being sold here. However, her face is all over it. So a huge range of souvenirs were produced and bought by the public. These souvenirs form what we call part of imperial propaganda. Now, this is just like, your favourite football team. Let's say your favourite football team is Chelsea. If you go and watch, if you go to Stamford Bridge or if you go to any sports shop around the country, you will be able to buy a vast array of different pieces of memorabilia. You can buy the replica kit, you can buy mugs, you can buy clocks, you can buy bedding, duvet covers covered with Chelsea emblems. You can buy notebooks, phone cases, whatever it is, and it's about getting their image out there. So what Chelsea want is it's almost like free advertising. If it's in your room, if it's on the back of your phone, then it's going to show the world how great Chelsea Football Club are. Okay, other football clubs obviously are available to support. It's just an example, but it's called propaganda. Propaganda is a message that's being shared by the government. It's an intended message. It's intentional. And what Chelsea Football Club are trying to do there is they're trying to get the message out that Chelsea is the best football club on the planet. And what the Queen and what the government are trying to do is they're trying to show how great empire is using the image of the Queen. And these souvenirs are part of that. So the Queen and Empire then. I'm just going to quickly read through this and we're going to think and try and answer these two questions. So the Empire was beneficial to Britain in many ways as a source of trade and wealth. So the Empire is there to provide money to the British people, to the British government. The Queen understood its value but also stressed that its aim was to protect the poor natives and to advance civilizations. So the Queen understands what the government is trying to do, and she supports the government. She wants to retain that relationship with the empire, but she also wants people in Britain to love and worship the empire. So they're not complaining about it, so they're not thinking about the people that are being exploited. And she does this by emphasizing the message that she wants to protect the poor natives and advance civilization. And this idea of advancing civilizations has been in place for a long time, the idea that Britain has got something to give the world. This was a time when people were very loyal to their queen and their country, so patriotic pride was encouraged. So again, patriotism today is slightly different. Back then, your patriotism was really important. You were wrapped up. You felt immense pride for how great Britain was and how far-reaching it was. So you were sucked into that idea of patriotic pride, and people really were vocal about how patriotic they were. The government realised that if people's enthusiasm for empire remained high, then it would have their full support when taking more land abroad. So the government believed that if they kept people enthusiastic about the empire and they controlled what they were sharing with people about the empire, they were talking about the positives, the civilization mission, then they would have the support when they were going to take more land over. So the public were shown this image of empire as this glorious, adventurous idea. It avoided all the negative connotations of empire which we study today. And it took a long time for historians to really start addressing empire for what it really was, at least for them to be recognised and accepted within society. So what I want you to do is I want you to pause the video here for about 5 minutes, and I want you to answer these two questions. Why was the Queen important to the empire? Why was the government so concerned about public enthusiasm? I want you to write in full sentences, and I want you to try and write in as much detail as possible. Pause the video here, 5 minutes please. Okay. So let's move on. Now this is what we're going to be talking about. We're going to be talking about forms of imperial propaganda. So what I want you to do is I want you to write the title Imperial Propaganda, and as we go through these different bullet points, I want you to write down maybe 3 forms of imperial propaganda, and I want you to write and I just want you to add some information about each one. So let's have a start. The first one is just like today. We have books and newspaper, and books and newspapers were designed to fuel people's enthusiasm. They were meant to encourage people to go and visit or to support the country. Okay, so it's just like these really big glossy photo books. Okay, say there's one on the book on New Zealand. Okay, it's not just going to say New Zealand on the front. It might say something like the magic of New Zealand and have a beautiful picture on the front. It would then have hundreds of pages of beautiful countryside, hills, mountains, beaches, and the idea would be that that book would get you to book yourself on a plane and go to New Zealand. So books and newspapers were designed to influence the way people think. They are filled with stories about brave soldiers doing their duty, fighting enemies for the Queen, and newspapers wrote enhanced accounts of successful battles overseas. Telegraph technology meant that news travelled faster, so it would appear in newspapers on the day of the event. One of the biggest examples of that is the Battle of Isandwala between the Zulus and the British. The Battle of Isandwala is still considered one of the worst days in the history of the British Army. They were completely defeated by an army of Zulus at Isandwala. They were surrounded and they were beaten. Almost no one who was British managed to survive off the battlefield. Only a handful of people made it out. But what the British government does like to talk about at this time is the Battle of Rorke's Drift, and that happened the day after the Battle of Isandwala. Now, Rorke's Drift is probably considered to be one of our greatest military successes. A small group of 300 soldiers managed to fight off a Zulu force of, in its thousands. And they did that by, nothing but their strong grit and their training as British soldiers. Now, what they don't talk about at Rorke's Drift is how the Zulus at Rorke's Drift were old men and young boys. They weren't the full fighting force of Shaka Zulu. All right, that's not what they were. They were actually a seriously depleted, weakened version of the main army. Now, why is it that the Battle of Isandlwana is not remembered and the Battle of Rorke's Drift is remembered? Is purely because the government wants you to focus on the positives. It doesn't want to focus on the embarrassment of Isandlwana. And to support that, they handed out more military crosses, more Victoria crosses in a single day to British soldiers. Never before have so many Victoria crosses been awarded for one single day of combat, which is really significant. They make the Rorke's Drift heroes and the Battle of Isandlwana, until historians start to talk about it later on, is widely ignored. The whole point is to focus on the positives and fuel people's enthusiasm. The next one is the music halls. Now today, we don't go to music halls, but back in the 1800s, people didn't have televisions. They had very limited resources to play music in their own houses. So if you wanted entertainment, you would go to a music hall, and a music hall would be a place where you can socialize, have a drink, and sing songs with your friends. Okay. Now some of these songs would be political, some of these songs would be pro-empire, but any jingo song is catchy. It's not got much to it, but it's something that everyone can sing along to and sounds great in a large music hall, just like the Royal Albert Hall in London. So huge crowds gathered to see film clips from the battlefield on the newly invented cinema screen. Poems and music hall songs celebrated the power of the British Empire. And what I've done is I've actually attached a clip. So if you look in the description of this video, you can see kind of a modern version of a jingo hall, which is the last night of the proms. It's the songs Rule Britannia. I just want you to click on it. Just go away from this video, click on it and watch it for a couple of minutes, and just feel a sense of what it would be like to stand in a jingo hall. It's infectious, it's powerful, and it really makes you want to sing along. Alright, so just pause the video there, go watch that video, it's in the description box, and then come back to me. Alright, another one, household products. Bars of soap to tins of food were covered with images relating to the glory of the empire. Again, you couldn't go anywhere without seeing some kind of propaganda image of the empire. Schools were filled with stories of Britain's great empire builders such as Cecil Rhodes, and students were taught that a huge empire was Britain's destiny. So how do you get people on side? Teachers have a lot of power. Now teachers today are very careful. They don't like to put their political agenda across. They want to give you a kind of a neutral version of events, and then you come up with your own opinions, you develop your own ideas, and I'm very careful when I share my opinions, and I'll make sure I let you know their opinions. But schools were controlled at this time, and people were taught things that the government wanted them to learn. And still today, the government issues schools with a national curriculum and expects us to teach you about Britain for a long period of time. That's why we do this course. So the school textbooks were very focused on how great empire was, because the message they wanted children to learn was just that Britain should have a large empire. Societies, two new societies formed, the British English League and the British Colonial Society. These supported the idea of imperialism and promoted loyalty to the British Empire. Again, these were places where you could go and meet and just share your opinions about the empire, and they were overwhelmingly positive. So, the main message that you need to get across, you need to write in your book, is that you could not escape the promotion of patriotic pride at this time. It was everywhere. Your family were involved, your friends were involved, your walk to work, it would be in your face. When you were cooking dinner, the cans, the packaged materials would have these images on. It was very hard to get away from. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video here, and I'd like you to answer these 3 questions for me. What was the role of technology in imperial propaganda? Why were children targeted by propaganda? And what was the impact of imperial propaganda? Use specific examples from the right for me. Okay, so this should take you about 5 minutes. Pause the video here and join me again in 5 minutes. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is you're going to look at this source. I'd like you to look at this source and I'd like you to answer those questions. Pause yourself for about 6 minutes and answer the questions for me. Okay, so what we have is we have a soap advert. This soap advert is first of all trying to sell you soap, but it is also showing you the impact of Britain on its empire, and it's celebrating how great Britain's empire is. And what this is showing you is a white child introducing what is a black child to soap. Okay, so he is handing over the bar of soap in the first image, and in the second image you can see that the black child has washed his body and his body is now white. Now this today is a very controversial image, but in the 1800s this was not, this wouldn't have turned too many heads. The message of this soap is that with civilization, okay, with civilization, i.e. soap, introducing them to soap, they're helping the black children become cleaner and whiter, and it plays on that racist idea that white is better. So Piers is showing how great its soap is, because obviously it's suggesting that it can change the colour of a child, okay, to a very clean white child, but also it's suggesting that Britain is out there doing what it's doing because it is civilizing the world and it is making the world whiter and more English. Let's have a look at another image. This is source B. We've already had a quick look at this source. I've already said that it's an empire plate. I want you to pause the video here for another 6 minutes, and I'd like you to answer those 4 questions for me. Okay, so starting at the top, you've got Victoria, Queen and Empress, Jubilee year 1887. So this is a celebration of the Queen and how great she is. We've got her big colonies in all 4 corners. So we've got Canada over here, we've got Australia, we've got Cape Colony, which is South Africa, and we've got India as well. So these are the 4 kind of pillars of the empire. In the middle we've got Britannia, and we've got the people that she serves. There's a line here. We've got people from South America, we've got people from Africa, people from all over the world that all look to Britannia for power. We've got Victoria here and her husband over here. We've got the world's map, okay, and all the red parts are controlled by Britain, which again shows that the sun never sets on the British Empire because it is so vast. They've also even put the imports, and the imports say 390 million pounds of imports and 295 million pounds of exports. So what it's showing you is how great the British Empire is, how much money it's bringing in, and how much profit is being put into exporting goods. So this is a celebration of how all the great things about empire and what empire does for Victoria and Britain. The British government was so keen to spread these positive ideas and messages about the British Empire because if people supported the empire, then they could continue to do what they are doing without being challenged. All right, thank you very much, boys. This is the last activity now. Sorry, again, there's just the blurb for that text. You can have a quick read of it. Pause the video if you like, just to read what that blurb says. This is the last question. Okay, this is the question I want you to go away. So as soon as I finish talking, you can stop the video, answer the question, 10 minutes only, and then send it to me and submit it via Show My Homework. The question is, what is the significance of imperial propaganda on the British Empire? Again, I've given you the points. All you need to do is find examples. I know this because, and you need to link that back to what I've written, and then you need to explain why that point is important. So the first point I've written is imperial propaganda was significant because it created a sense of unity in Britain. I know this because you could talk about the jingo crowds, talk about societies, you talk about the celebrating, Victoria's Golden Jubilee. This is important because obviously if people are together and united, then they're going to be more supportive of what the government wants. The second one is imperial propaganda was also very good for the government. Why? Remember we talked about the Queen understanding the importance of the empire for the government, and then this is important because obviously we talked about how if people were distracted, if people were shown the positive things, then they would be supportive empire and they'd let the government get on with it. All right, boys, thank you very much for listening to today's lesson. Please make sure you get this completed and you send it to me. It's only a 10-minute question. It's only 8 marks, and I will give you some feedback as soon as I can. All right, boys, thank you very much for listening. I will join you again next week. All right, bye then.